Hi, everybody, to the Write or Die Show. I am your host, Randy Lee Boslaw. On today's episode, I am going to be talking to Marilyn Redmond. Welcome, Marilyn. Super excited to have you on the show.
I am so glad to be here, and thank you for asking me. This is a delight.
So, Marilyn is 3 hours behind me, so she had to get up super early to join us today. So, thank you so very much. You inspire me because I don't know if I'd want to get up that early.
Well, it's working. It's a beautiful sunny day. It could be worse.
Oh, well, that's good. It's a rainy, crappy day here. So,
Well, we have more than our share in Washington State. We're known as a rainy state. So,
okay.
if you come to Washington, bring your umbrella.
I will keep that in mind. So start with the easy question of tell us about who Marilyn is.
Well, thank you for asking. I was originally a school teacher until I retired medically from teaching school. I've taught everything from kindergarten through college. Classroom and music. And then when I got to college, I started teaching metaphysical classes. And somebody in class asked me if I ever did counseling. And teaching is kind of like counseling, and you're helping the kids.
Yeah.
And so I said yes. And I decided I needed some more training to be a little better at it. And one thing led to another. I ended up taking some classes, which made me an ordained spiritual minister for counseling and a medium.
Okay.
And talking to people on the other side. And through the counseling, I was helping others with what I went through. I was in domestic violent marriage of lots of abuse. You can put the pieces together for 30 years. And I got out of it alive because he tried to kill me several times and I was trying suicide.
Oh my.
And so in learning how to get out of that predicament and what it was about, and what I found out is you find the root cause of a problem. And when you deal not with the symptoms, but with the root cause of the problem, you can actually heal it. So in my becoming a minister, I learned regression work. And I also took a class with a fellow in Virginia, state of Virginia, who taught past life regression. And I found out a lot of our problems come from past lives. And then I became internationally board certified to do past life regressions and regression work. And then I became on the American Board of Hypnotherapists through taking classes for hypnosis, which basically, when you do regression, it is hypnosis, it's meditation, it's all the same, it's all going into an altered state. So through that kind of a background, I started understanding where my problems came from, and I could help others, because I know today when you regress somebody, you go straight to their soul. And so you don't have to deal with the symptoms. And in my case, I had a lot of symptoms, but when you deal with the real, where is this coming from, then there are no more symptoms, you've healed them. So that's what I like to do with my clients, is help heal the real problem, what's below the surface, you might say. And through that, I was writing and going to some writers' classes, and I had a poem. My first book was Roses Have Thorns, and I was working on these poems of my disastrous life, as I grew up in dysfunctional domestic violence too, with alcoholism and mental illness. And so I was writing poetry about that. And I went to my teacher one night and I said, well, it turned out she was a publisher also. Would you publish my poems? And I really didn't think anybody would find them that valuable, but I was curious. She said, she says, I was hoping you would ask me. So through her help, I got my first book published. All my books are on Amazon.com. And then I became channeling because of becoming a spiritual minister. And after one of my channeling, Saint Germain came in and said, well, this is going to go in a book, what I said today. So that became my next book, The Real Meaning of 2012. And then because I've learned so much through channeling and working with people of how this all comes together from the root cause, I wrote a great big thick book, 500 pages, took 25 years. And that book's called Paradigm Busters, Reveal the Real You, because it goes into how you can do your self-help. It's a self-help book, and move out of, and I call it hell, into grace.
Yeah.
And where I am today. Thank God I got out of that situation where I was married. And today I'm living a very wonderful life I didn't know was even possible. And then I've written a couple more books since then, Road to Success and Finding Reality Beyond Fear. So, which takes you beyond the self-help book. So it's kind of, they're kind of in a progression. And then I have some ebooks also. And I've done this for many, many years at this point, and just kept plodding along. And last year I had two really nice things happen. I was told, I belong to the Edgar Cayce Association. If you know who he was a psychic in the 20th century that was well documented, and is an international organization. And I was supporting their prison program, and they distribute my books internationally to prisons.
Oh,
And
cool.
have a study group in one of the major prisons in the States. And then so after that was a really feather in my hat that they were so happy with my books. And then
Yeah.
I found out in this, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, there's a book called Who's Who in America. And I was in there, I was included, this is very prestigious. I was included in Who's Who. So
Ooh, you're a
all,
who.
all these things are, that was a real celebration time. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That is pretty cool. All right, we're gonna dive in a little deeper to your story, specifically around the mental health part. So you know your story best. You know the parts that I think resonate with people the most. So wherever you want to start with your story, whatever you think is the most inspirational part of it, let's just jump on in there.
Well, I love that. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand mental health, I've discovered. And my mother was mentally ill with paranoid schizophrenia. And my father was an alcoholic, and my stepdad was mentally ill too. And I had to leave that environment to get well, because what you're around is what you are, so to speak. And you can't, it's very difficult to change because they don't want to change, and they don't want you to change because you're their support blanket, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I had to basically disconnect from my family, and I made that choice. I was married at the time, and so then I basically had to get a divorce to stay alive, actually. And in recovery work, I found out quite a few important things. One of them is if you had a lot of abuse as a child, which I did, and if you don't have no talk, no trust, and no feelings, you can't move out of the abuse.
Yeah.
Dysfunctional families are not communicating, and it's like you're there but you're not there, so to speak. You have a roof over your head, but there's no family get together where they support each other, because everybody's in survival and
Yeah.
fear.
I love that. Sorry, just gonna interrupt for a sec. I do this sometimes. I love how you said everyone's just in survival, because I think a lot of people don't realize that there is a distinct difference in different phases of our life. So survival mode is very different than living your best life. It is very different even than the beginning of a crisis, right? When you're in survival mode, you're literally just trying to make it to the next minute. But when you're living your best life, the minutes are like fleeting. They go by so fast because you're loving life, you're living it to the best of your ability. But in survival mode, every minute feels like 10,000 years because you're just trying to keep pushing. And then like the beginning of a crisis is when your body is starting to do all that, your mind is starting to race. But I think that, and this is just my opinion, I'm not a doctor, I'm not certified, but from my personal experience, I think the best time, well, maybe not the best time, but when you start to notice that you're going into a crisis mode, that is a good time to take yourself back and ask for help. Because once you're in survival mode, it's whenever I've been in survival mode, it's 10 times harder to ask for help because you just don't know who to ask, because you don't know who to trust.
Trust is a big part of it. You're right.
Yeah. So that's just my 2 cents from my experiences, because yeah, my stepdad was an alcoholic, and my brother was an addict, and just I had depression. So there was a lot of different components. And so whenever I've been in that survival mode, I shut out everything else and don't know that I even need to ask for help anymore, because I'm just so focused on being alive in this moment that I don't even realize that I need to go out and get help. So at the beginning of the crisis is always my best time.
Well, I didn't even know I was in survival. That's how bad off I was. I had no clue of there was another way to live life, because I was raised, in the mental illness from day one. In fact, I know today I took it on in the womb. And from doing past lives, I also know I brought in a lot of this with me. So there's a history that goes way back. And so I was born in fear, and I was born with knowing about my mother's sexual abuse. And it set me up for my own abuse that I went through, because what I know is like attracts like. So as I was I do a lot of meditation, because that's what I do with my clients. And so to get myself in a better place with different issues. And one day in meditation, I was asked, do you want to come out of your mental prison of mental illness like your mother couldn't do? And I said, yeah, I'd like to come out of this. And so a lot of opportunities showed up in my life. See, life is a choice. And I didn't know I was in survival. I got addicted to the doctor's prescriptions, the depression, the anxiety, the medications they put you on. And I ended up in treatment. And in treatment, I found out what was going on. My bottom was, my husband's trying to kill me one more time, and I've already tried suicide several times. So I said, I didn't even know you were supposed to pray in those days. I went to church for 50 years, but the prayers were always out of hymnals. So to pray from your heart was nothing spontaneous in my family. And so out of just total desperation and total crisis, I said, God, please help me. I really don't want to die. And I ended up in treatment, and that's where I found a spiritual path and the spiritual answers, so that when I go into self-hypnosis, if you want to call it that, that you're reaching your soul and you're bypassing the ego where all this crisis comes from. And so you can get a healing. And so one of the books I read was called People of the Lie by Dr. Scott Peck. And he wrote a very famous book called Road Less Traveled. And in there he said, mental illness is the lack of self-honesty. And I know today that was true about my mother. Back when she was living, you didn't talk about molestation. You didn't talk about all the trauma. You didn't talk about abandonment issues. You didn't talk about relatives trying to kill you and living in orphanages when your mother can't handle having 8 kids at home during the Depression, trying to raise everybody, and she's sick, So she had a really traumatic childhood, and of course that transferred on to me, I know today. So I had to not only heal that, but I had to heal my own trauma of the sexual abuse I went through and the traumatic situations I experienced. And so in doing that, as you gradually heal those situations, the PTSD that comes from all the trauma, Those are all can be healed. Edgar Casey says in truth, there is no incurable condition. And I found out through becoming a hypnotist and regressionist that you can go back into the soul and heal those situations. And what you're really doing is releasing the past reactions from fear. And you move into living in the now. So you're living in the present moment. And when you're in survival, it is all reaction, walking on eggshells. If you came from the background you described, it's all walking on eggshells. When's it going to happen? And then if it doesn't happen, that's scary too.
It is, which is, I don't think people who haven't experienced it, they can't understand it because it's a weird concept. Well, if it didn't happen, then why is that still upsetting? Because you're expecting it to happen. And if it doesn't happen, does that mean that the next time it's going to be double?
Exactly. You get it. So in healing all those past situations, you have to forgive the people and situations because that's the past, that's your history. So forgive means to give up for a new day. So if you
are like that, can I steal that or delete?
Yeah, that came to me in spirit. You can have that too.
Thank you, thank you.
And it really helped me because if I give up the past, I don't have to react and be influenced in my life today. And so I've had to forgive everybody and every situation from my past. And I've had to, there's a doctor that was in Hawaii. It's a Hawaiian name, so please excuse me, but it's on the internet. And he put together a prayer, I guess you'd call it, and healed all the mentally ill people in his hospital in Hawaii. And they had to close the hospital. And I've used that because part of what that prayer is about is taking responsibility that I set the whole thing up for me to learn how to move into reality and how to be in the moment, which is a gift, and they call it the present. So when I acknowledged all the emotional incest for my stepdad and thanked him in regression, thanked him for playing that part, because it's like Shakespeare was right. Everybody's in a play and we're all playing the different characters.
Yeah.
So in my regression, I saw everybody on the stage and I'm standing up and they're taking their bows because the play's over and I'm clapping. They played their parts really, really well. Thank you for playing your part. And as soon as I took responsibility for my life, it wasn't a problem anymore.
That is awesome. Sorry, I'm going to interject again.
Okay.
My thing is, if I don't, I forget. I have a very poor working memory. So I have to interject when it comes to me. When you're talking about forgiveness, that is such a hard concept for people to wrap their head around. And I was one of those people for a long time, because especially when you grow up with abuse in the house, how do you forgive the abuser? Like, in my mind before, and I have this conversation with my youngest all the time because we're working through some of his issues. Forgiveness used to mean, in my head, it used to mean, it's okay that you did what you did to me. It's fine. You can keep going, but it doesn't. And so I just want to make it very clear to people, if they're thinking the same way that I used to, that is incorrect thinking. Forgiveness, and that's why I loved how you said give up to a new day. And I'm so glad that you just told me that I can have it, because I don't know, might make a t-shirt out of it because it's so good. But forgiveness doesn't mean it's okay that you did what you did. Forgiveness means it happened and I can't change the fact that it happened. So I'm going to release that from me. I'm releasing it so I can move on. What you did was still wrong, but I don't have to live there anymore. I can live this other better life. So
exactly, you're releasing the emotional attachment to it, so you are free of it. It's not for the person you're forgiving at all. It's to free you from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point. Forgiveness makes you I think of a ball and chain, and now you can walk away without the ball.
Yes, that's great. I love visuals. I like that.
So what I found out is because I do past life regressions, we write a script before we come in of what we need, energies we need to change in our whole soul energy. And it's not just this lifetime. So I have been in several past lives of this kind of predicament, and this was the lifetime where I was to release it. So I was with my ex-husband in several lifetimes of domestic violence. This wasn't the only one. So as I'm ready and able to at this point have enough self-esteem, and this is a really huge, you can't have self-esteem when you're drugging yourself. So I had to get off the prescription so I'm free to make rational choices and to let love in, because the drugs actually stop the love from entering your life. It's like a black blanket of the fear covers it up. The drugs, anything toxic will cover up the light of God. So you don't have access to that. And to learn to accept love. I thought love hurt because of my abuse. My stepdad would beat me with a 2x4, and I said, I didn't do anything. I was trying to be Miss Perfect so I wouldn't get hurt. And I said, I didn't do anything. What did I do wrong? And he says, well, I'm only doing this because I love you. And so I thought love hurt. So another part of, in my opinion, and from my story, is learning to let down the walls of protection from that survival so you can let the love in.
Yes, I used to work at one of the Native Friendship Centers around where I live. And I was in the literacy and employment program. We did this program, and I can't remember what it was called. It was so good, but it was all about learning to love yourself. And it was like, I don't know, 8 or 12-week program, something like that. The videos were phenomenal and the information was phenomenal. And the biggest takeaway from that I had was that you cannot experience real love if you do not love yourself. And what you're saying is exactly what that program was teaching, because the takeaway is, like I said, that I got was, if you're not loving yourself, you're going to attract other people who don't actually love you, but they're, I love you, so I'm hitting you, right? But it's not real love, but you don't understand that that's not real love because you don't have proper love for yourself. And I definitely had a few bad relationships, not nearly as bad as what I'm hearing, but they weren't good. And so luckily now I'm have a wonderful husband.
Wonderful.
But you have to love yourself first.
Well, like attracts like. So my domestic violence actually attracted my husband because that's where I came from. That's where he came from. Okay. And so like attracts like. So I had to change. And whenever I get angry at my higher power, I look at the ceiling for some reason. And I said, I do not want to create another battering and abusive marriage of rape. So God came in and said, then you have to become what you want in a partner. You have to become, so that's what you'll attract. And so I'll give you the short version. I wrote a list of the attributes I wanted in a partner. And then I had to become those characteristics and change who Marilyn was. And I've been in a relationship for 20 years of unconditional love.
Oh, yay.
So you can walk out of mental. Oh, I was declared sane too by my psychiatrist. So somebody said nobody's ever been declared sane. Well, I have.
I've never heard that before, but all right.
Well, the 12, because of being addicted to prescriptions, I ended up in 12-step programs.
Okay. And
I found out one drink and one pill is 6 times the effect. Pills are just like alcohol, the dry form. You have to get honest. You have to emotionally clean out the past. You have to take a look at yourself and say, where do I need to change? So I've become fearless. It is in my book, Paradigm Busters, I use that process and I have become fearless. That means you grow up, you become mature. It's a little kid in the dark,
Hmm.
a little kid in the dark room of the bedroom at night. Mommy, there's a boogeyman in here, right? And the mommy goes in and turns on the light and says, there's no boogeyman. Well, that's what's going on with people. You got to turn on the light, get off the prescriptions, turn on the light of your higher power, the sunlight of the spirit. And there's no fear. It's an illusion. And so when you move out of the fear into reality, and that's what reality is love. Love is reality. And when you finally are in that space and with the self-love that you talked about, you become a loving person and you finally have love to share with somebody, and what goes around comes around. And that's the kind of relationship I'm in today. I can actually extend love instead of my fear. And then that love comes back in multiple ways that better than I would have ever dreamed, believe me. So, we have to change. I had to change to create a new reality, because we do create a reality from what is emotionally inside of us, and anything negative stops love. Anything, I've been recently on a new diet, which not only detoxed the prescriptions and so forth, but detoxed my immune system. And I went, no wheat, no milk products, no sugar. One more, anyway, I'll think of it, but I can't, what has happened is it detoxed me emotionally.
Okay.
All of a sudden I started having feelings I never had before.
Hmm.
And it was amazing to me how much more alive I became and sensitive. And it was like a whole new world. And it's like inside, like who's in there today? It's not the same person.
Yeah. We're growing and changing every day. Or I shouldn't say we are growing every day, because some people want to stay fixated, or not that they want to, but they just don't know how to change.
That's what my books are about, is the how to.
Yes. But either way, every single day we're different, whether or not you're consciously changing or not, because every day we're at least one day older, which means we have to be different. And so we can use that opportunity then to change and grow for the better.
Well, I didn't know there was a different way to live life until I got to treatment. And I ended up in Al-Anon first because I was so codependent. Abandonment was a huge issue for me. And I know it was for my mother too. And when we're feeling abandoned, we're separated from the love and the life force of the universe. And that comes the opposite being self-love, that you're loved and taken care of by your creator, no matter who you are, because you're his child, you're part of the energy of the loving universe. So you've never been abandoned. And so to heal that is a major part of mental illness, is that you are a part of. I always was the wallflower. I was always last man picked for the ball team. I was the last one picked to have somebody come and dance with me in school. I was never part of. and to all of a sudden, some things have happened to me that are just amazing. I'm in some 12-step groups on Zoom, and I couldn't get in. This happened just this week. I couldn't get in through some Zoom problems. When I finally made it in, the people were cheering. Here's Marilyn. That never happened to me before. I'm just sitting there saying, oh, I'm not cellophane. People actually see me. I'm here and they're noticing me. And it's like, wow, this was huge for me.
That's good. That is so good.
So, we can change. It takes work and courage. But for me, I don't call it courage as much as, okay, God, I need more faith for this one. Here we go again.
Yep. That's fantastic. So, I mean, I feel like you've talked a lot about how you've overcome some of this and some of those coping skills, but what is a coping skill that you've used that you find really, really works well for you?
Well, for me, it's meditation. My church, I went to church for 50 years, sat in the pew, taught Sunday school, sang in the choir. And I'd come home Sunday afternoon and get beat up. So, church was not my answer. And so I ended up in 12-step programs, which are spiritually based.
Yep.
And I found out if you meditate, and my church used to preach against meditation. That was the voice of the devil, my church said. And the minister had all the answers. Well, it turns out it's actually the voice of God. Your intuition is God speaking to you. And if you bypass the ego and go into your heart for direction and guidance, you get the information you need for your life, not what experts say. It's their life. They're talking about their life. What other people think's none of your business. Go in and find out what you need to hear for you, because you're an individual. You're not a rubber stamp of everybody else.
Yeah.
So when I learned to meditate, I scared the dickens out of me originally. But today I meditate every morning before I get my feet on the floor, because I need directions of what I'm supposed to do that day. And as a writer, sometimes my agenda changes because God says, well, you're going to do this instead of that. So, but the funny part is my life comes together much better when I meditate in the morning, and because what I'm directed to do gets done. But I also, the weird part of it, I still have time for what my other situations are that need to be taken care of. That it all gets done.
Good.
So, yeah, it's like time just takes care of itself, and it's not like I'm missing out. It's just allowing me to do the right thing, because that's what reality is, doing the next right thing. And our minds are so caught up with all this agenda, the list of my to-do list, or the pressures from yesterday, or the bills needing to be paid tomorrow, or, my mind is so full of all this other stuff. And to just take care of right now, this is what I need to take care of. That's the next right indicated thing, keeps me in reality. And that's huge for mental illness, to stay focused right in the moment. Put your focus on, this is what I'm working on right now. And it will take care of itself. And the next thing comes along and it takes care of itself. And you get through the day. And like last night, I says, gee, I didn't think I'd get all that taken care of, and it was done, So it actually makes my life more effective and more productive.
Good. I love that. A lot of people a lot of people say that meditation is one of their best coping strategies. I'm still trying because it's not an easy thing to do. It's not like you just sit there and you close your eyes, you like quiet for 5 minutes. It is so much more than that. It's
Not
quieting
really.
the brain.
Listen to this. When I first heard that I was supposed to meditate, because that's part of the 12 steps.
Okay.
And I said, God, I read a book and I couldn't figure it out. So I said, God, you're going to have to teach me how to meditate. So I was in bed, exhausted from teaching. The psychiatrist put me on a sabbatical for 2 years because I was in such exhaustion from being a workaholic overachiever, trying to survive. And so I'm just laying in bed with my arms open and my heart open. And I said, God, you teach me, whatever you tell me, I'll just listen. And so for a whole year, I just laid in bed and in exhaustion. I couldn't even watch television. I was so bad. And whatever started coming, gradually I started hearing silent voice inside. And so that started actually giving me help to heal my relationship with my mother. And then the second year, my husband abandoned me out of state on a vacation and left me on the beach at Oregon. And I went to the beach and meditated, and I said, now what am I supposed to do? And the directions came. And I said, oh, you don't understand. I can't do that. Well, I was so codependent. To ask for a temporary separation was absolutely impossible in those days. And so that's the directions I was given. So after 3 times, that's the same directions. I said, okay, if that's what I got to do. And the rest of the story was hell to pay, because when I asked for the separation, he just couldn't handle it. So but what I found out is when you hear the information, you have to act on it.
Oh, yeah.
And the action is what makes the change in your life. It's the energy has to flow. So I always was a fence sitter. don't choose anything, because if you don't make the right choice, you know, it's going to go down the tubes. So I never made choices. I just was a zombie sitting on the fence, always wondering what's going to happen. And so when I had to finally make choices and follow through with those choices, then gradually it got easier and easier to meditate, because I knew it was going to work for me. But I had to open my heart. I had to make the decision, whatever you bring me, God, I'll listen to and pay attention. And I didn't use a lot of finagling to meditate. I just asked God to show me how. And it's what I'm finding out is my resistance is what stops it. If I'm open-hearted, nothing's going to stop it.
Well, that's the hard part of it, though. That's what makes it hard, because when you go, for me, when I go to do it, every other thought rushes in to try and stop me from being quiet, and it's hard to get all those other thoughts. That's what my brain, I just need to
Well, let me give you 2 pieces of information. First of all, you can fire the voices in your head.
I've been doing that slowly.
All right. So if you're fire the voices, be specific, you know, humbly remove whatever this message is and replace it with love and grace. So you always want to replace what you're firing with something positive.
Yeah.
The other thing is, oh, but I had it for a minute. Oh, the word hard. That's a judgment. You're judging yourself. I took the word hard and easy out of my life. It just is. Is. Love is. God is. Life is. That's no judgment. And when you take the judgment out of it, you just do it.
Yeah.
That
makes sense. Yeah.
You're setting yourself up like a runner down the track. The run, you have to run and jump over the barriers. You're putting your own barriers up when you say it's hard.
It's true. That is a good point. So now, I mean, you've already kind of talked about what books that you've written. So and you said Amazon. So is that the best place for people to go and get a hold of them?
They can get them at Amazon or Barnes and Noble on the internet. And I also have a blog, Marilyn Redmond's books, blogspot.com, and that'll connect you to my books too. And I have a lot of articles on my blog. I have a website, angelicasgifts.com. I've written hundreds and hundreds of articles. I have 2 columns every month I write. One for Sussex newspapers, an international newspaper on the internet. So in fact, that's this weekend I sent out my newest column for that newspaper, Sussex newspaper out of England. And I have I have 176 YouTubes.
Nice.
And I would love to be able to put this on YouTube. So if you'd send me the link for this.
Yes, when it gets posted, I will definitely be sending you the link.
And so my YouTubes are a variety of things. Some of them are channeling, because I am a medium, and some of them are lectures, and some of them are interviews, and some of them are just like us. We're just chatting away, whatever, but they generally have a point and a topic. And you know, I always try to help people with whatever is going on. I have an uncanny way of picking up, as a counselor, it's been very valuable. I have an uncanny way when people come for counseling is to be able to see from what they're saying, what the root cause of their problem is. Immediately, you go to the opposite of what's going on with them, and that's what they got to work on. So I've been able through that to be able to share that kind of information of when people start talking, I know what their concern is or what they need to deal with and turn around. And I've discovered, you know, it's usually something where you're needing to change whatever it is from negative to positive. The smartest thing anybody can do is to substitute the positive for the negative. And that puts you in a line with the universe. That puts you in line with the love of the God, of your higher power. God is always positive. So no matter what's going on, rephrase it. And are you familiar with affirmations?
Oh, yes.
Okay, well, what you're doing is you're affirming the truth.
Yes.
And when you're in positive affirmations, you're replacing the old programming of the trauma, drama, problems from the past. And that's what you want to do, is to clean that out so that it's not affecting you, and you can be present in your life and effective in a way that is productive and joyful. And we're here to enjoy life. And, you know, I was dying when I got to treatment. I was 45 years old and I was dying, and I'm 81 years old today, and I couldn't be doing better.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I gotta say, I wouldn't say you're in your 80s. I'd be like early 70s.
Well, in my experience, spirituality is the fountain of youth.
Oh.
It's our fear, shame, guilt, all those things make us look old because we're the survival we talked about. Your energy goes out to those things. If you clean them away, you aren't putting your energy into that anymore.
Yes. Love that. And all of the links to get a hold of Marilyn, read her blog, get a hold of her books, they will be down in the description below.
Oh, well, thank you.
Very easily find it. And thank you so much, Marilyn, for being on the show and sharing with us.
Well, I've enjoyed every bit of it.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Well, she was a lot of fun. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but I was noticing, and for everybody who's listening on the podcast, what I'm talking about is she had a bunch of owl stuff behind her. And so after the interview, actually, I asked her about it because I'm a curious person. And she said that, you know, when she was little, she was always praying for wisdom. So then she started an owl collection because owls are, you know, the wise old owl. So that was pretty cool. I loved that. And the owls looked pretty cool too. There was like, I don't know, pictures and like a little wall thing. I liked it. So be sure to check out her links. They are in the description down below. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button here at the channel so that you never miss an episode, because this is such an important topic. We do have a merch store. If you're interested, head on over there. At 10% of the proceeds go back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.